I'm not sure. Oh, I'm not muted, am I? I'm not sure if everybody's here yet, but I've been instructed to start the show. I see Betty Canick. Oh, good, I'm not muted. Thank you for waving, Betty. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the 22nd Annual Roddy Exhibition, Artist Reception at Concord Art. Well, virtually at Concord Art. Tonight's sponsor is all of you. I want to thank you for putting your trust in us to create a great exhibition and for helping us fulfill our 100-year-old mission to promote and advance the visual arts and artists and to enrich and sustain our cultural community. I think with your help, we do a great job at that. I'm here at Concord Art. You can see the tree. And I just want to say I'm here with three of my heroes. One of them is Elizabeth Wentworth Roberts, who painted this tree, the founder of Concord Art. The other one, wait for it. And the other being Amanda Gorman. Can you see her over there? So I'm surrounded by heroes and they're my heroes and so are you. So thank you so much for being here. I want to thank the staff and volunteers for all their hard work. Sasha Pasek and Marissa Cote are running tonight's program. And thank you, Sasha, for managing the entry process. There were 700 entries and 109 pieces of art are on the walls and on the pedestals tonight. So please come in and see them tomorrow. We are open and we welcome people wearing masks. The show is beautiful. Thank you to our intrepid volunteers, Bill Maxfield and Charles Gibbs, who I always look forward to working with for every exhibition. I'd like to thank and introduce Gibbs Roddy. The Roddy family has been so generous to Concord Art over the years. We are lucky to have them. One really treasures those close old friends in times like these, and we want to thank them for their loyal patronage and thank them for being our friend. Hello, Gibbs, and welcome.
Thank you, Kate. The current Roddy family can't take credit for this, but it really all started with my mother. And so that's what we, as a family, created this event for, was really to honor her, because she loved the Concord Art Association. I'm sorry, I always revert to that, the former name. I'll get used to Concord Art with time. She loved Concord Art. She was a member for over 65 years. And it was really through her that I and my kids and my wife all fell in love with the organization as well. So this show was to honor her. She passed away in 1999. But it's really a credit to all of you who submitted works, because that's what makes Concord Art go. That's the lifeblood of the organization. I thought I'd just share with you a couple of sort of historical tidbits, so you kind of can understand why Concord Art became so important to my mother. Throughout the years, she was born in Belgrade, Montana in 1914, and really had a very idyllic childhood, living in a very small community, with a total of 651 residents at the time. But then the Depression came and the crash, and my grandparents were pretty well wiped out during that period. The general store my grandfather worked for folded, and he needed to go up into Yellowstone National Park to find work. And as was common, in those times, children quite often would go off and live with other relatives if it provided them with some new opportunities that they couldn't find in their hometown. And that was the case with my mother. In 1931, when she was 16 years old, she got on a train with her blue jeans and one formal dress and came to Concord to live with a woman named Edith Robb, who was the widow of a cousin of my father's. Her husband, Russell Robb, was actually one of the founding members of the Concord Art Association in 1922, but he subsequently passed away a couple of years after that point. And so Edith was lonely, and she offered to have my mother come live with her to provide company. She sent her to Concord Academy for a couple of years because the Belgrade school system wasn't quite of the caliber that Concord Academy or Concord's was at the time. So my mother was introduced to Concord art at the age of 16. And over the years, Edith Robb was very involved in Concord art. And during the Depression, she really provided a tremendous amount of support and financial backing to keep the organization going, because there were several times when it was on the brink of not being able to survive. So over the 65 years my mother was involved with Concord art, she had the opportunity to meet artists that she otherwise wouldn't have had she remained in Montana. Once she was married, she took oil painting lessons from our esteemed artist Loren Coleman for several years, which she absolutely loved to do. She also, was very active, originally sort of working in sculpture. She worked in wood. She worked with different stone, steatite, alabaster, lots of different types of stone, until she got to the point where in her 80s lugging stone around was a little too burdensome for her. And at that point, she came back to painting and took up watercolors. And for years, she took watercolor lessons from a variety of different artists at Concord Art, one of whom was Marjorie Young. She loved how Marjorie Young was as free as she was with her watercolor painting. There was, very little emphasis on form. And as my mother's eyes deteriorated with age, she found that actually quite liberating. She didn't even think about form anymore. She just loved to work with color, and that really, in the latter part of her life was her fascination, was color and what she could do with it. She always would tell the story to my kids. She lived on Monument Street over with a western looking view, and she loved to sit out at night and watch the sunset. And she would tell my kids, she said, if I painted the colors that I see right now, no one would believe it. And so they've always remembered that. That was a very special lesson for them. I think it opened their eyes in ways that that maybe other words wouldn't have. So as my wife and I and our kids have all had a chance to go through the show and see the different works that all of you have submitted, at least virtually. It's fascinating, and it's just heartwarming to see so many different forms of expression, and especially during the challenging times that we're having right now, I think, more than any time, art has a way of allowing the artists as well as the viewers, a way to find some sort of an inner peace. So I think as tough as these times are, it's a real shining moment for art. So I know my mother would be thrilled with all of the works that were contributed to this year's show. And so I just want to thank you all for making it happen. Certainly everyone at Concord Art has risen to a tremendous occasion to pull all of these off, during this time. But for any of you who were part of this last year, I think it provides us with a wonderful opportunity to have to hear an exchange between the artists and our great juror this year, so that the artists can describe what it was they were thinking and feeling. And so it's really exciting. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody.
Thank you so much, Gibbs. I think you're, I hope my Zoom is working, isn't it? I think Gibbs is not. Thank you so much. We are so grateful to you and your family. I'd now like to take the opportunity to introduce our juror, Sam Adams. It couldn't be more of a pleasure for me. Sam just might be the world's most charming human, really a charming gentleman. He is also a curator and art historian specializing in modern and contemporary art and performance, holding a BA from New York University and a PhD from the University of Southern California. He has worked at the Metropolitan Museum, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Getty, the ICA, the Central Institute for Art History at Munich, and last but certainly not least, the Cordova Sculpture Park and Museum. He has been a great friend to Concord Art and even shared a story at True Stories Told Live. That was last year, when the theme was, it's all about community. Thank you so much, Sam, for choosing all of this incredible work. We're so excited for the public to come see it in person. And I wish we could see you live, Sam, but this is okay. And here is Sam.
Thank you so much, Kate, and thank you to Sasha, Marissa, and everyone who helped organize tonight. I can't think of a better way to spend the evening than listening to artists and being with you and hearing about your processes. I feel the presence in the Zoom room tonight of a number of decorative predecessors of mine, different curators over the years who have juried this exhibition. And the artists that they chose, some of whom are returning to the exhibition. And so I just want to acknowledge that beautiful relationship between our institutions. And I really appreciate those comments. Gibbs, thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about Frances, who I did not know that towards the end of her life, this idea that color overtaking form actually is very apropos of a lot of the works that I chose. There were so many just astounding artworks, and it's such an honor to have had the chance to shape the exhibition. I really tried to follow my intuition, which is, I think, in keeping with the way that a lot of you made these artworks. And I also want to echo something you said, Gibbs. I think that we are, this exhibition is coming on the heels of one of the most draining, traumatic experiences that most of us will ever live through. And that it's not only in these times, but always, that the work of visual artists keeps our heads above water and is often the most loud, or the first and loudest voice to tell us that the ship is sinking. And if we look closely, as I hope you will have a chance to do if you come in person to Concord, these works show us how life can be salvaged and best lived. So that's very true for these works. And so they inspired in me these words. modernism is everywhere and nowhere in this exhibition. For an artist to abstract from nature, to render it hazy or unfamiliar, to alter the conventions of its depiction, they must first grasp the subject intimately and know how to convey its essence. In this exhibition, once familiar subjects such as a seascape, a vase of flowers, appear uncanny and in some cases almost unrecognizably abstract. The land and its natural specimens are blurry, polluted, obscured by a chain link fence, out of reach. The sublime is hinted at and yet irretrievable, impossible. In many works, I'm sure you too will feel the artist's subjectivity adhering to that of their subject, and a type of gestural brushwork and mark making that is rapid, deeply felt, and intuitive. So those are some of the qualities I actually tried to follow the lead of the artist in selecting the artworks for the exhibition. Portraits of strong women recur in the exhibition. That was a choice of mine, but also very, very present in the submissions. In some ways, it was predetermined by the submissions. A fashion model with a very striking, sort of strong presence. The late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a pregnant woman enjoying a moment of leisure, a trio of young women staring up at a literal glass ceiling with a sense of ambition in their eyes. The first National Youth Poet Laureate, who Kate just showed us a glimpse of, Amanda Gorman, this incredibly inspiring figure. And so while the subjects themselves of these portraits are deeply inspiring, the handling of the artistic materials also conveys a deep sense of empowerment and urgency, almost in excess of the image that I felt in all of those cases. I'm sure you'll feel that as well if you have a chance to stand in front of them. And then lastly, I thought, just sort of summing up the selection, there is a focus throughout on pattern and decoration, an intimate sense of materiality, and a very inventive use of humble materials such as cardboard and wire. The gestures you will see are bold and unapologetic. The color chords that I was drawn to are flamboyant and yet judicious. There's a sort of celebration and restraint at the same time. And should you make it to Concord, you'll see that the exhibition is rounded out by a few, I would call them sweet and sour, send-ups of the minimalist grid and monochromatic painting. So that's sort of to circle back to my comment that modernism is everywhere and nowhere here. There is a sense of sincerity and also something happening in excess of the image, something that borders almost on a sense of sarcasm in some cases. This is the third show I have juried during the pandemic. I cannot wait to see the works in person. But and something very different happens when you're looking at the artworks over the screen as JPEGs, and you consider it on a very different level, which is a very interesting experience. But I can't wait to see the works in person. So with no further ado, let us proceed to the prizes. So Concord Art is giving out $3,000 in prize money to the artists tonight, which I think is very generous and very exciting. It's been the pandemic, this past period we're coming out of has been so difficult for artists, and just to throw this support behind some practitioners, I think is really exciting. So thank you to Concord Art for making that happen. And I'm not a mathematician, I'm an art historian and curator. So I'm now going to translate that to millions of dollars, and you can all do the math, the breakdown yourself. So we're going to start, there will be 3 categories, and we will begin with the 4 prize winners who will be winning $250,000. Please begin the slideshow. Thank you so much. So congratulations, Stephen, Edson, surface tensions. To me, the ocean is this perpetually moving force, cannot be stopped, and nothing can stop this force. It is so strong, this ebb and flow, this tide coming in and out. And this photo somehow completely freezes it and just makes it into this sense of stasis and suspension, and it makes the sea sculptural. So I feel the wind carving these ripples and dimples into the surface, and it makes it abstract. This could actually be the same event occurring over sand on the beach or a field of grass. Stephen, if you could please unmute yourself, I'd love to invite you to say a word or two about this. I'm personally interested, how do you take the aerial photographs? Do you edit them? If so, how? To what extent? And black and white versus color, do you work in both? How would this photo operate differently in one versus the other? Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Sam. And thanks for choosing the piece and selecting it for this show. This photograph was made about 2 weeks ago in the Pacific Northwest as I was traveling by ferry from the mainland of Seattle, north of Seattle, Anacortes, up into the San Juan Islands. So it's at sunset, and it's the height within the photograph is allowed by being on the third deck of the ferry, probably feeling very much like 20 degrees out. So it was a little jolt to the system. Color is very important to me, although a lot of my work, as you noticed, becomes sometimes becomes monochrome. But I love working within tonality. And this image that we're looking at is part of a larger series called Surface Tensions, and they're studies of water. And it's really a study of, or meditation of water influenced by wind, tides, reflections, and light. And it's forever changing, and it changes very, very quickly, as you might imagine, with all those confluence of elements at work in it. So some of my work does appear as black and white because there's something to it, but in this series of Surface Tensions, it's all a color series.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think what you responded back to my initial prompts shows how much these photographs trigger in the mind's eye, actually in excess of what's even pictured here. There's all of these aspects, elements of color, or black and white, of movement, etc.
Thank you.
We would like to move on to the next winner of $250,000. Joel Janowitz, this amazing painting. So, oil on linen, 30 by 44 inches, ocean mist. So, I didn't know exactly what I was looking at, but I was pretty sure it was an endless sort of horizon on a misty sea, against which you were juxtaposing an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And to me, this immediately became a metaphysical space. Each swimmer was moving through life at a slightly different pace, a slightly different movement. This pool became a totally abstract space for sort of the individuality of each swimmer, each person. It was incredible. It wasn't even about able bodies. It was just about humans, about this sort of subjectivity. So the water, I want to say, is, first of all, incredibly just masterfully painted. I think of David Hockney, who apparently on his splash paintings of like young men jumping into pools in Los Angeles spent like 6 months on like the splash. And they are also masterful, but somehow there is all of those elements of water, warmth, light refracting off of the water. So congratulations on this beautiful work. So my question for you is, did I misinterpret the notion that you've turned the swimming pool into a microcosm of human existence? Is that all happening in my head, or is that what's going on in this painting? And are they specific pools, or are they fictional? Do you sort of invent each one?
So I think you nailed it from my point of view. And it's sort of, you began by saying, this is such a hard time we're living through, and keeping our heads above water And that kind of put a chill in my, in my body, because I feel like that's really the subject. This is from a pool that I saw. I went on a journey to Sydney, Australia for a wedding in 2019, I guess it was. This is from that time. And walking along this famous beach called Bondi Beach in the city, the pathway rose up and I looked over the edge, and there below was this enormous pool. It's a public pool. It's right on the edge of the ocean. And it's probably, I think it's about 100 years old. And the ocean is crashing into the pool. The waves splash over. This painting is part of a series that I did of oceans and pools. And in many of them, I have this kind of inundation and, kind of a reminder of rising sea levels. And at the same time, just how complacent we are and swimming along in our lanes, and how much capacity we have for, ignoring really important issues that are facing us. And at the same time as, having that narrative, I also love painting and I love color. In this particular painting, I calmed down the ocean and just let it start to disappear. And that sense of the unknown that we're confronted with and often not paying attention to, I think is something that's really important to me.
Absolutely. There's this amazing sense of like your goggles are fogging up and you have this sort of tunnel vision, you can only just see, and you'll eventually arrive at the end of the pool, but you can't see it until you get there. It's a sort of like, if the Caspar David Friedrich, the German romantic painter, this sense of this sublime, this scary unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And just to mention the notion of series, I did a series before this of protected trees, where we wrap up trees with 2x4s of dead trees and plastic fencing to protect them from the in this case it was in Cambridge, the redoing of a sewer system. And all over Cambridge were these wrapped up, shrouded trees. And so in different ways, I'm looking at this issue and have continued to the present.
Thank you so much, Joel. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Our next $250,000 winner is Susan Murray. Please correct me if you're in the room on the pronunciation of your last name. With this gorgeous cyanotype watercolor, 44 by 30 inches, The Crossing, 2021. So to me, Anna Atkins' spirit is very present in this work. I know that you have a background as a gardener. Anna Atkins, the first person in history to actually invent the cyanotype, a British woman and a botanist. So I was wondering if that is a reference for you. But what I loved about this image, so it's a floral arrangement with a sailboat, like almost like a model like boat, sort of like sailing by on the lower right quarter. And so what I loved about it is that it seemed like you were bringing together earth, sun, and sea. The sort of the solar aspect of making a cyanotype, the earth, the flowers, and the sea, this boat. So it was this amazing sort of microcosm you created. But yeah, so my question, to you is, well, first of all, I'm thinking about Anna Atkins. Whether or not it's a reference for you, but I'd be interested to know. But how did you land on cyanotypes? I know that you came to this medium later in your life, in your artistic practice. What draws you to the medium as opposed to any other?
Hi, Sam, and thank you so much for including me. Yeah, Anne Atkins is always there in the back of my mind. I'm very aware of her work. I saw a show of her work in New York at the public library. I went especially to see it. Yeah, definitely an influence on a lot of people who do cyanotype. I was drawn to it because I saw in a magazine someone's work, and I've been doing photography for a long time, and I saw this article, and I thought, I love that. I want to try it. It's really as simple as that. So I tried it, and I really liked the process. And so, and I've been doing it for about 15 years, and it always is surprising. It doesn't always come out the way you think it's going to, which for me is a plus. Most often I get great surprises out of it. And so I really like that. There are ways to control it somewhat, but it has a little bit of uncontrollableness to it, which I like. So that's really why I was drawn to it. I'm drawn to the color that you can get. And it just kind of keeps on giving to me. And I can't imagine being tired of it. I've done different kinds of photography, but this one's not going anywhere for me.
Absolutely. There's sometimes cyanotypes, there's a sort of a haphazard way to compose them, and there's a very intentional way to do it. And I just feel like your background in gardening is apparent in the sort of sensitivity to the arrangements as well. Congratulations, Susan. Thank you so much for this work.
Thank you so much.
And lastly, in the $250,000 category, Phil Young. I'm not sure if you're in the Zoom room. If you are, please feel free to unmute yourself. Well, there's.
There?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you might be echoing, but you're there. Congratulations. There's a lot of beautiful abstract painting in this show. So this, in a way, also acknowledges some of the other incredible abstract work in a similar vein. But I was very drawn to this composition and also this incredible chord of colors. So, and to me, the reason is this: it's that there was this push and pull between different planes and depths of vision. So like a single passage appears to be pushing away from me and very distant, and also pulling towards and very close at the same time, simultaneously, and it pops in and out of those registers. And I feel like that is one of the very, very, very most advanced things that abstract painting can do, is to actually take on a spatial sort of presence. So thank you so much for the submission. And my question, if you're here and able to respond, is there a reference here? Like I said, there is a sort of a sense of spatiality. So is there some reference, like were you actually looking at a detail of a table corner, or is it purely abstract? And how do you begin the painting like this? Which elements come first?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
First of all, thank you so much for including me in this show. I'm thrilled to be part of the Roddy exhibition. I guess it's purely an abstraction, although my work is usually based on landscape forms or seascape forms. I paint from the seat of my pants. I have a blank canvas and I look at my cart that has lots of paint, and I decide if it's a brand new thing. Oh, let's mess around with green today, maybe. So it will start with the color, but then lay other color over it, and change this and rework it. And my work is usually bright color, and this one was gradually becoming just nicely muted. I know when I was in grad school, the professor walked by my space I was working on, and he said, "Neutrals, Young, neutrals." and he was quite right. I like to push paint around and see what happens when this goes on to that, and eliminate that. It's scary for me lots of time, because I see what I have, and I say, what the hell did you do that for? I had another prof who said, what's your favorite part, Young? And I would say that, put my hand around the section, and he'd say, well, get rid of it. And I looked at him and said, what? And he said, because you're trying to relate everything to that spot in the painting. Think about the whole big picture. So I have followed his advice. I've started painting much more since I retired from teaching. And I guess I worship Richard Diebenkorn, but also Fairfield Porter and a guy named Afro Basaldella, who's known by his name of Afro, who was an Italian painter who died in the 50s, who has unbelievably beautiful, beautiful work that I just want to steal from the museum.
Well, thank you so much, Phil, for bringing us back to that sort of mid-century and post-war vocabulary of this sense of abstraction as this very internal, subjective, intuitive type of mark making. And what I love about what you said is neutrals, and that is absolutely the case that throughout this Roddy exhibition, neutral colors are being employed to sort of radical and loud ends. And so there's something actually loud about the way that neutral colors can be used. And I find that in this painting as well. Congratulations. We now move on to the $500,000 category. Nancy Roberts, if you are here, this portrait is called Older 2020. 11 by 14 inches in inkjet print. So I tried to jury the show as blindly as possible, but then had an opportunity to look up many of your websites and to get to know more about your practices. Nancy, I can only
Going back to mute.
might be a self-portrait based on your work. But I wrote about it and thought about it, juried it without knowing that. And so I just want to say that it's a stunning and incredibly striking image. The light and the composition are beautiful, as is the body itself beautiful. But what I love most in the photograph is the honesty and the vulnerability around aging. So something that I perceive in it is honest and vulnerable around the topic of aging. To me, the profiled nipple, which is on the left of the image, the right breast, it draws my eyes. It's incredibly sort of shaped, sort of outlined. But actually, the hands is the sort of the punctus for me, and it is because the hands seem to reveal not only the subject's age, but also her relationship to the process of aging. And it almost blows me away that I feel that much is contained in the way that you've portrayed the hands, maybe your own hands. And so I welcome any response to that. I know that I come to your practice not knowing very much about it. But I wonder, also as a curator who also addresses themes of intimacy and sort of sexuality in my curating, I wonder, in this sort of moralistic context of New England, have you ever gotten pushback for depicting yourself nude? And if so, how do you respond? And also, I'm just wondering about the aesthetics of this photograph. It's the shadow is just so perfect. Was that by chance, or had you planned that out? Thanks, Nancy.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. That's really interesting what you said. Yeah, I've been taking self-portraits for about 50 years. I used to write in a journal, and then I thought, I'll take pictures of myself instead to document my life. And I took my first self-portrait because I saw a scene and I thought, this is boring without a figure in it. So I just did that. And then I also sort of came of age in the 70s when I started reading about feminist art and women becoming their own image makers as opposed to just male nudes, which are just, traditional stuff. So, so I've been taking, pictures of myself ever since. Not all nude, but I've been documenting my life and sometimes the self-portraits are just figures, sometimes they're symbols, and sometimes they're just me dealing with my life. And you're right, this is about aging. I figure just because I took pictures when I was in my 20s, I should still take them now. And so it is about aging. I also did a whole series about my children leaving home, sort of an empty nest series. So sort of holding my stomach is a little bit about that. It wasn't the one thing I liked, like the woman Susan said about cyanotypes, is that with self-portraits, they're kind of a surprise. Although with digital now you can see them, but I grew up as a darkroom photographer, and you take all these self-portraits and you didn't know what there was going to happen. But so I love the light. I mean, I knew the light would be on me somehow, but light's what photography is about. So and gesture too. And I have had some pushback. I won't tell the whole story, but I had some pictures taken down off a wall and it was my pregnant stomach, because the person thought, my breasts were included and that shouldn't be there. And it's kind of interesting. But women do tell me, like, how can you take pictures of your nude body? But I mean, I look at that and I know it's me, but it's not me anymore. And I went to a nude workshop once where you took pictures of a model, but I didn't know those people and I don't care about them. So why would I want to take pictures of them? So I'm always available. So I take pictures of myself. And I guess I'm going to still do that as I age. But it is a lot about aging. But
Yeah, and it's so interesting to think back to those practitioners of the 70s and the way that people like Hannah Wilke were criticized for being beautiful and taking pictures of themselves. They were criticized.
And Noggle, and she's this huge woman with these huge, I mean, really huge dress, and she was taking pictures. And
Yeah.
I know I must have been influenced a lot by the women of the 70s and photographers.
I see that now. It hadn't occurred to me when I first saw the image. Yeah, absolutely. And that you say the censored photos were pregnancy photos, and the way that there's a taboo about women addressing anything to do with pregnant bodies.
Pregnancy was a great photo opportunity because my body was so different.
Absolutely, and there's such really strong self-portraiture in that genre. Thank you so much, Nancy. It's such an honor to be in dialogue with you and to get to share your work with this audience. And our other $500,000 winner is Jasmine Chen. Jasmine, if you're here tonight, loved getting to know your work.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Loved getting to know your practice. So the picture it's an oil and acrylic. It's called "Why Is Your Big Head So Hard?" 2019, 40 by 60 inches. So a large format. So this is one I cannot wait to see in person to get really, really close and look at details. It's true for every single work in the show, actually, but abstraction fills 3/4 of this canvas. That's what I see. Abstraction filling 3/4 of the canvas with every single imaginable speed of painting and level of finish. So almost this construction and deconstruction of the language of painting. And then this huge range of expression in your brushwork is then recapitulated in these two inverse heads in the upper left. To me, because one is peacefully sleeping and the other is this terrified mask-like face. So it's this sort of spectrum of human expression that is both figurative in these faces and then rendered in abstraction through brushwork. So a really energetic, exciting canvas. I welcome any response to that. Anything you'd like to say about the work, Jasmine? And my question to you is, do you use preparatory drawings? Do you sketch onto the canvas before painting? How much is planned out versus spontaneous? Because there's quite a delicate balance of those two things.
Thank you so much, Sam, for selecting my work for the show and the $500,000 prize. I'm so excited, a little bit nervous to talk about this. But I was born in Beijing, China, and I actually, much like Gibbs' mom, I came to Concord when I was about 16 years old. to attend Middlesex School from China, and so I have that shared experience, and what a coincidence. And I came, and my background is very diverse. I grew up in socialist China, and then I had some extreme experiences there. We're going to boarding school when I was 2, getting DDT poisoned when I was 4, falling on a puddle of DDT that repelled mosquitoes from the entrance of the bedrooms, and just and then I came here and studied actually applied math and economics in college, and I actually have my PhD in economics. I worked on Wall Street, so the other extreme in terms of a social system, and but I became a painter when I was in my late 20s, almost 30 years old, after teaching economics and math, and just finding that painting was really my true language, that was intuitive for me. And I actually find that having the economics background and is helpful for me, in the sense that it provides that something for me to push against. So I very much try. For a long time, I think I tried to push against rationality and just rely on intuition and the irrational, and stop focusing on key statistic figures like the average and the expected value, and focusing on the error term, the mistake, because I find mistakes more interesting because they're surprising. And my process is a discovery process, and I want to surprise myself. You asked about whether I use sketches. For this one, I actually did. If you rotate the painting 90 degrees clockwise, you would see a double, you would see a portrait of 2 people. And so that's where I started. That was a picture of me and my painting teacher for this painting workshop, 3-week-long painting workshop that I went to in the summer of 2019 in Orvieto, Italy. Wow. And I think my inspiration was the wonderful experience I had there in that 3 weeks. And also in Orvieto, there's this beautiful Duomo in the center of town. And it's a giant piece of art that was built over 300 years, gone through the Gothic period, and then it evolved as new materials became available and new styles became popular. And that, I think that was my inspiration. I think I look for inspiration in life experiences. Sometimes when my life is not as exciting, I look into memory and my imagination, but I'm definitely ready to hop out of my studio and experience life and its surprises. So there are periods of time when I don't paint. I may not paint at all, but it also allows me to again surprise myself once I jump back into painting. So I'm not really afraid to not be in my studio and forget how to paint. In a way, that's how I paint, is to paint freshly, is to forget how to do it so that I can start new. I don't know. I just rambled. I mean,
no, that was perfect. And I can absolutely tell that, Jasmine, that there is a really interesting mix of discipline and control and just experimentation happening, and that you're really allowing yourself to do both things and to indulge in both things. And everything you said about your biography and background is actually very present in that. That's really, I appreciate that you sharing all of that. I cannot wait to see it in person. Congratulations. And
thank you so much.
And now we move on to the grand prize of $1 million. That goes to Cal Rice. If you're here, Cal, nice to meet you. There's two paintings in this exhibition by Cal. There's a few duplicates. A few artists have double paintings. It's just they were different enough that it seemed worth showing both. Um, and the other painting we're not showing because it's not PG-13. It's just too disturbing. It's too disturbing. It is a figure. The other painting is a figure sitting in an RV in a camper, with it's just you just look into those eyes, these two completely red eyes, and the rest of the scene just melts into this sort of bloody bloodbath. It can't be shown. It can't be shown on a screen right now. It's just we would have nightmares. But you'll see it in person. Just bring a chair with you. So this piece though is called Entropy, 2020 gouache acrylic on panel, 24 by 22 inches. You know, Cal, so like coming to it, the piece evokes a lot of actually masterpieces, a sort of Martha Rosler's type of collage. And actually it really for me is like Richard Hamilton's collage from 1956. What is it that makes today's home so beautiful, so appealing? Very, very iconic work that sort of initiated the whole movement of pop art, this idea of like sourcing imagery from common life and bringing it into the picture plane. So it reaches back, and Neo Rauch, R-A-U-C-H, Neo Rauch, the German painter. So it evokes all of these incredible, but you're doing something different and carving out your own space. So I appreciate that. And so just turning to this piece, Entropy, I would say that the figures to me are unsettling, deeply unsettling, and that they're washed over in a sense of blankness. There are empty thought bubbles, blasé poses, and obscured eyes. We can't see a single person's eyeballs. It's what could be less human. The artist performs a sort of boredom with the very act of depicting boredom. And yet I cannot turn away from the flattening of dimensional shapes. The arbitrary patterning that runs throughout, I can't figure it out. Like, I love getting into that. Like, I can stand in front of, well, anyway, a cubist painting for hours and try to figure it out, but I can't figure this out, this patterning, almost randomly. And a sort of casualness about composition. Which I find that you're striking a very delicate balance between flatness and depth, uncanny and familiar, and some very harsh color contrasts that feel to me both contemporary and quintessentially 70s. So there's a lot of weird going on, and I cannot wait to see these in person. So my question to you, I feel like you give a lot, I have a sense of this style, of where you're coming from in terms of the style of the paintings, but where do you source your imagery from? And I'm wondering if any of it is personal, like family photos, because something almost, that the twisted nature of these makes me think that something must be personal here. And also wondering how long you work on a single canvas, because they're so layered. Are you like working on many at different times and like layering them sort of simultaneously?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. First off, thank you so much for choosing my piece and including me. I'm super honored and thrilled to be a part of this. Very cool. As to your questions, the first about where I source my imagery from, you know, a lot of, you know, most of what I work on, it comes directly out of my head. I have a lot of things I look at for inspiration and, you know, that I use to kind of spur on ideas. But then beyond that, it's more or less entirely made up. It is this piece. It's interesting that you bring up the family photo thing, though, because there's actually a painting on the wall within the painting that is an image of my grandmother's house. So you know, things like that do enter into it. But it is, you know, straight out of my head for the most part. You know, I tend to look at a lot of old science fiction work and old pulp art and things as far as where I'm drawing my inspirations from beyond that. But otherwise, it's all up here, you know. And I'm so sorry. Can you remind me what the second question was there?
Yeah, and I'm actually I'm just noticing in the bottom left corner that arm
Oh
is
yeah, yeah.
just a spaghetti noodle. It's just incredible. It just the way that it pops you in and out of an actual space and just flat pattern, complete pattern decoration. Um, so, oh, and I'd asked if you work, how you work in terms of series, or are you working on multiple canvases at one time, or is it like, like, are you applying like those big leaves to like six canvases, and then like like how do you,
Yeah, I tend to like, I've kind of found that I like to work in this like rule of threes. So I'll have three pieces going on at once, kind of at different stages. Sometimes, I work at things at different rates so they'll catch up to each other, but they're usually quite different. And I'll basically have, some like general ideas, some really basic concepts that I just this like long running list of things that I want to tackle. And I'll, slowly start drawing them. I'll maybe like get halfway through one drawing, start painting the other one. And then in that way, certain elements will kind of tie in from different pieces. Those leaves, for example, in the series that this is from, those are present in a lot of things. So it's funny you bring that up too. But yeah, that's generally how I work. And the process is, it's pretty intuitive. And I have kind of a weird system that I don't think I've perfected it, but I've developed for myself that I think is a little different than like how I have been taught in school, or how a lot of other people work. And it's just this weird series of rules that I stick to, and you just kind of plod along doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, in this mode of image making, sometimes you discover that an artist actually has like a secret like shoebox under their bed of like 10 cutout images that they're always recycling, but no, you know what I mean? Yeah. Congratulations, Cal. It's so nice to get to know your artwork a little bit more. Can't wait to see it in person.
Oh, thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody else at Concord Art as well, and the Roddy family. It means a lot.
This was such an honor, such a pleasure to be in dialogue with you. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Kate, and others. And thanks for being with us tonight for the reception. I hope everyone has bubbles. I'm having a seltzer in a margarita glass. So cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, artists. Wow, congrats, Stephen, Joel, Susan, Phil, Nancy, Jasmine, and Cal. And I just want to say that the work is even better in person. I mean, it looks great on the screen, but it's really, really amazing work. So even if you don't come to buy all of it, just come to see it, because it's great. It's really great. I appreciate seeing all of you. Some of you winners tonight I've never met. And so when you come in, please, if you could stop in the office and say hi, I would love to meet you. And those winners who I already know, I'd love to see you as well. So I can't wait to have a real in-person reception so we can all, hug each other. But that day is coming and I look forward to it. And until then, I wish you well, and thank you all for being here tonight. See you at Concord Art. Thank you.
Great job, Sam.
Thank you
so much, Kate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.
Congratulations,
Thanks.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you so much
Thank
for a
you.
fun night.
Very
Thank
interesting.
you.
Nice. That was very nice.
So you have to check out, I think.
No,
First.
you don't need to. Left.
I know. I'm
Thank you.